Hey, what's up everybody? So in this video we're going to show you how to do edit, update, and delete feature for your image upload with Cloudinary and Molter in your Express applications. So let's get started. So this is going off of the application that we created in the original image upload tutorial. If you haven't done that tutorial yet, then go back and check it out. Otherwise, this is where we're starting from. So let's take a look at our routes. In the campgrounds.js route, you can see that we have Cloudinary configured here. We have Molter in our storage configured up here. We have a post route. This allows us to upload an image and then take that image URL that gets uploaded to Cloudinary and store it in a new campground in the database. Then we have our new and our show. We have our edit right here and our update. So currently the edit and the update don't have the ability to update the image. So let's go ahead and start with that. We'll take a look at our views for campgrounds. Inside of our new view, we have this div right here which houses all the input information for the image. So we're going to go ahead and copy that, and then we'll open up the edit EJS view. This is where we're going to edit the campground, and we need to plug in that same information where originally we had the image. So before, when we were just using a URL to a third-party picture or website that hosted the image, now we actually have the image hosted on Cloudinary, and we want to give the user the ability to change that image in their edit form. So I'm going to paste this in. Remember, this just came from the new.ejs file, and here we have label for image, input type is file, ID is image, name is equal to image, accept image, and then it's required. Well, we don't want to make it required because that would require the person to upload a new image every time they edited their campground, and they may just want to edit the name or the description and not the image. So we'll remove the required attribute, and we just want to make sure that the form is capable of handling this type of request. So we're going to change, or we're going to add an attribute enctype, so enctype is equal to, and then inside of quotations, multipart / form dash data. And if you want, you can just go to the new file and copy that from right here. So there's that. Let's save it, and let's go back to our routes for campgrounds.js. Here we have our cloudinary.uploader.upload, and then it takes rec.file.path and returns a result. So we want to do this if we're uploading an image. Well, like I said, the user may not want to upload an image every time they edit the campground. So we'll use a conditional statement to check whether or not they uploaded anything. And remember, we need to have this middleware up here inside of the middleware chain, upload.singleImage. So down in our put route, we'll put that right here, upload.single quotation image, and then a copy or a comma. So whenever they send a put request to /campgrounds and then the ID, we run this middleware to upload a file if there is a file in that input, and then that sends us to the final callback function in this middleware chain. So here we're going to say if rec.file exists, meaning someone has uploaded a file, then we're going to go ahead and take the path from that file and use it to upload to Cloudinary. Now, this is the old syntax. Let's go ahead and take a look at the new syntax. So here, this is the edit campground repo that I have from making this feature previously. And so you see this is a branch on the master branch in my GitHub for the image upload examples source code. So if we go into the routes, Campgrounds.js and we scroll down to the put route, we can see that the syntax now is cloudinary.v2.uploader and then the .destroy or the .upload. So what I'm doing in here is I'm finding the campground image on Cloudinary that existed previously and deleting it before uploading a new one to take its place, because we don't want that image that's up in the cloud to stay there and then we just get a bunch of images that are just floating around but we're not using them in our application. So in order to use that .delete or .destroy method rather, we have to use the version 2 API. So I'm going to go ahead and take this syntax right here and I will put it into where I was originally going to use the cloudinary.uploader.upload. Now we're using Cloudinary, let's make this a little bit smaller, version 2 uploader.destroy campground image ID. Well, this assumes that there's an image ID. So let's pause for a minute and make sure that we have an image ID to be able to select the image in the Cloudinary API to begin with. So I'm going to save this file and go take a look at my campground model. And so right now it doesn't have an image ID. So let's go ahead and put one here as a string. That means that we need to save an image ID whenever we upload it originally. So that would happen back up here in the post route. Well, we're still using the old syntax here. So let's jump back over to that source code that I have. And don't worry, I'll link to this in the video description so that you can reference it as well. And so if we go back up to post, here I'm doing a Cloudinary version 2 uploader.upload. And as long as everything works out, then let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. So if there's no error that we have to deal with, then down here we get the secure URL like we were doing previously, but we also get that public ID. And the public ID is what I'm calling image ID in our Mongo database, and that is what is going to allow us to identify and delete the existing image whenever we upload a new one in its place for the edit form. So I'll just go ahead and copy all this code right here from the post route, go back into my application, and we will plug it in right here. So I'm going to paste over it and save. Go ahead and get rid of that extra comment there. And you'll notice here I'm calling it image underscore ID. In JavaScript we typically want to do camel case, so I'll do image ID. They have public underscore ID and secure underscore URL in their API. That's fine, there's nothing we can do about that. So image ID here, and remember back in campground.js, this is our model file. We also have image ID as a property in the schema as a string data type. So I'm going to go back here and save this, and let's go ahead and test this out. So if I look at app.js, I can see I'm using Yelp Camp version 9 as my database. And so in my terminal, with MongoD running in its own terminal, we'll create a new terminal tab and open up the Mongo shell. Then we'll use Yelp Camp version 9. Don't worry about these warnings, you can ignore them. We'll show our collections. We have campgrounds here. So we'll do a db.campgrounds.find. There's nothing in here, good. If there was anything in there, I was going to go ahead and delete it anyway. That way we wouldn't have to deal with existing campgrounds that didn't have an image ID. So now let's go ahead and test it out. First I'm going to start my server. So over here in my image upload example folder, I'm going to run NodeDaemon. This is the same as running Node app.js. If you don't know about NodeDaemon, check out my new video for using NodeDaemon in your application. So here I'm getting a missing paren after the argument list, campground.js 107, and that's in my routes. So I'm going to go back here, scroll down to 107. This is right here. I have this line right here that opens up a callback, but we're not using it just yet. So I'm going to comment it out, and that should get rid of the error. Now Yelp Camp server has started. I'm just going to double check. Yep, we're using port 3000, so that's good. And so in a new tab, I'm going to go to localhost 3000. And I'll log in with an existing user. And we'll add a new campground. So we'll call this one Hello World. We'll choose an image, and we'll use this one of the Aurora Borealis. So this is a test, and let's submit it. So here's the image. If you right click it and copy the image address, and you paste it in here, you can see it goes to Cloudinary, my Learn to Code info account, and here's the full-size image. Great. Now what we want to do is go back over here to that Mongo tab that I have open and do another db.campgrounds.find. This should show the new campground in the database, and we can see right here the image ID is set to whatever, this long character, the string of characters, and so that's important. That's how we're going to identify the image when we need to delete it later on. Okay, great. So if I go back over here and scroll down, we have update campground route. I could copy and paste all this, but for the sake of going through it line by line, I'm going to go ahead and type it in. So first, let's go back into our code, and here we are. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so you can see it all at once, and I'll uncomment this line. So this is our put route. This is the route that gets accessed whenever we submit our edit form. So we're uploading a single image. This will upload an image if an image exists, otherwise rec.file will be undefined, and then here we are in our final callback. So we're checking to see if a file was uploaded. So we do cloudinary.version2.uploader.destroy campground image ID. Now let's go ahead and make that image ID like we changed it to in our model, and this actually is going to get moved down because we don't have a campground that we found yet. So I'm going to copy this whole 3 lines and cut it, and then down here we find the campground by the ID and update. Well, we don't want to update it just yet. We want to find it, use some of the information from it, and then we'll worry about updating it manually. So I'm going to get rid of this right here, this object. It's the second argument. It had this set new data, and then new data here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this as well. And so we'll find by ID. I'm going to get rid of and update. So now we're just finding the campground by the ID. We're passing in rec.params ID, which comes from here. So we're pulling that from the URL, finding the campground in the database, and then if there's no error, we're returning the campground. So we've already handled the error situation here, and then now below it, we have our else statement. So if there's no error, now we're going to check and see if there's a file, and if there's a file, we know that the user is trying to upload a new image for that specific campground. So now what we can do is we can go into Cloudinary and we can destroy the image from the cloud and then get back the result. So assuming that there's no error, let's go ahead and close this and close that, and we'll say if there's an error, and we'll do the same thing that we did here, flash an error message, redirect back, and instead of using an else, so we don't have a bunch of if else, I'll just put a return keyword here. So this will return out of this function here and redirect back to the previous page that we were on. Now below it, now we can actually upload the new image using rec.file. So that's going to be cloudinary.version2.uploader, and if I'm not mistaken, it's upload. We pass in rec.file.path and then a callback function that handles the error if there is one, and then gives us the result. Up here you'll notice we have error and result for the destroy. We're not doing anything with the result, so let's go ahead and just put the error there. That leaves us less information, so we don't have as much confusion with duplicate variables. Okay, so down here when we've just uploaded, let's do the same thing with the error. So we'll just paste this in and it'll handle the error if there is one, returning res.redirect back. Otherwise, here is where we can take the result and pull the new URL for the image that we just uploaded and replace the existing URL for the campground in the database, which, if you remember, we have access to from here. So there's that campground. So now we'll do a campground dot, let's see here, campground dot image ID is equal to, I think it's result dot public ID, and then campground dot, I think it's just image. Let's double check our campground. Yep, image is equal to result dot, and I'm pretty sure it's secure URL. We'll double check all this stuff in a second. Okay, so we've uploaded that, but what about the other stuff on the campground? So we have to figure out a way to update any other information that's coming from that edit form, not just what we have here. So all of this happens inside of this if rec.file. If the file gets uploaded, then we delete it, upload a new one, replace the existing information. Okay, now here we're going to replace the existing campground's information with whatever comes from the form. So I'm just going to jump over to the source code here and see what I've got. See how I handled it here? It looks like I did a find by ID for the first campground, and then I did a find by ID and update for the second campground. So that's fine, but I don't want to query the database over again since I already have access to the campground. So in this case, what I'm going to do is just replace these properties one by one. So we have name, description. The author is not going to change, and then the comments aren't going to change. So it would just be name and description. So we'll say if rec.body. And let's go ahead and check out our edit EJS to see how we formatted this. So we have name equals name and name equals description. If you have campground bracket name or campground bracket description, then you have to do rec.body.campground.name. But in this case, I just have it like this, so I can access it with rec.body.name and rec.body.description. Okay, so back over here, I'm going to say if rec.body.name, then we'll do campground.name is equal to rec.body.name. Now, this is 3 lines. This seems like something that we could probably do with a ternary operator. If you haven't seen ternary operators before, they're really easy to use. So let's go ahead and check them out real quick. So a ternary operator, we can say campground.name is equal to, and then we're going to check and see if campground.name exists. So we'll say, we're going to check to see if rec.body.name exists. So rec.body.name, question mark, rec.body.name, otherwise campground.name. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this. And what this is saying is set campground.name, so the campground that we got from the database, equal to rec.body.name if rec.body.name exists. So if it's coming in from the form, then we're going to set it equal to rec.body.name. Now, I'm thinking about it, and the edit form is always going to send a name back. Okay, even if we don't edit it, it's going to send back the value for the pre-existing name. So if we go back here, we actually don't need to do any of this ternary operator stuff. We can just say campground.name is equal to rec.body.name, because we know that rec.body.name will either be the same as it was previously or it'll be updated, but there's no reason to check and see if it exists because we know it's going to exist with either the pre-existing value or a new value, or if they removed it altogether, then no value at all. So we'll do the same thing for campground.description is equal to rec.body.description. So now we've updated the image if it exists, if it's being uploaded and replaced, then we delete the original one, we upload the new one, and we replace the original information with the new information. Also, automatically, we replace the name and the description, whether they were changed or not. And now, for the final thing, we're going to say campground.save. So this is going to save the campground in the database, which updates it. And now we can rec.flash and say it successfully updated, and redirect back to the show page using the campground's ID. So we haven't tested any of this yet. Let's go check it out and see if it works. Okay, so here's our campground. I'm going to refresh. It logged me out. That's because of all the changes that we made. It restarted the server. So I'll log back in. And we'll go to Hello World. And let's edit this campground. So it has Hello World here. It has this as a test. And that's why we left those values as campground.name is equal to rec.by.name. Same for description. Now we're going to upload a new picture. So I'll take this picture of these mountains, click upload or open, and now we'll click update. So it says it was successfully updated, but it's still showing the original image. So let's go back and double check and make sure that we did everything right. So in our campground, we have image ID and image. And then in our show page, we're rendering the image with campground.image. So let's close that. And we'll go back to campgrounds. So we should be checking to see if there's a file. If there is, destroying the campground in the cloud, in Cloudinary, and then uploading a new one with rec.file.path. So let's make sure that we have the right information here and the right information down here. So it's Cloudinary v2 uploader upload rec.file.path error result. That all looks correct. Save that. And then down here we say, here I'm actually adding this stuff to the body and then I'm updating the campground this way, but that's not how we're going to do it. So result.secure URL and then result.public ID. So let me make sure we have result.secure URL and result.public ID. And down here we're doing this. So the problem is, what's happening here is we have callbacks right here and we have a callback right here. So if this happens, then these functions get run and then we're waiting. We're not going to sit around and wait for these callbacks to finish. What we're going to do is keep running other codes sequentially. So if this is here, which it is, all this gets run, and then down here this gets run, this gets run, this gets run, but this all gets run before this has a chance to finish. So this is the kind of the caveat with using Node and async code, is you have to have a way to manage this stuff. What we can do is we could move all this stuff up into here and let it run whenever this callback is done running, and that would definitely work. But if there's no file, then we would have to duplicate this code so that we ensured that the name and the description also got uploaded or updated in the event that they were updated but the new file wasn't uploaded. So that would not be very dry, because then we would have a duplication of our code. So let me think of the best possible way to do this. Okay, so I think the best possible way, at least that I can think of right now, is to use a new feature in ES6 called Async Await. So I'm going to introduce this new concept briefly, try to explain it the best I can while also staying on track with what we're trying to achieve. So basically what we're dealing with here is a callback and another callback nested inside that callback. And if you know anything about callbacks, they're great. They help us keep our asynchronous code firing off in a synchronous manner, but they can also get us into what's called callback hell, where you get kind of this tree of code that it gets pretty garbled and hard to follow. Well, promises can clean that up quite a bit. I'm not going to explain promises, but basically in the newest version of JavaScript they have something called Async Await, which allows us to wait on asynchronous code to finish before running something else. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and utilize that. First thing we need to do for this function that wraps everything else is add the keyword async. Okay, and then we're going to, right here, we're going to get rid of this if statement for the error, this if statement for the error, and we're going to get rid of these callbacks, and we're going to get rid of the closing code for those callbacks. And then we're going to close that, put these on the same line, bring this back, and we will say if rec.file, we'll do what's called a try catch. So we're basically going to put these asynchronous lines of code inside of the try block, and then if either of these have an error, we'll catch that error and we'll deal with it. So we'll go ahead and take our common rec.flash res.redirect back, put it right here, and we'll make sure that we return out of here if we catch anything. So these can go side by side, and I like these to line up, so we'll put them right there. So we'll say await, and what this means is we're waiting for this to finish running before we go to the next line in our code. And like I said before, normally the way that it is we run something. If there's a callback, that will be fired off whenever that something is done running. Otherwise, we go on to the next line while we're waiting, and we just keep doing more tasks lower down in our code while we're waiting for that original code to fire off that callback. So here we actually need this result, so we'll call this result. We can say var result. If you're using the newest version of JavaScript, it's let, but we'll go ahead and just use var for now. So var result is equal to await, and then we'll do upload with the file.path. And so now, if I'm going to go ahead and cut both of these lines right here, clean this up. Once this is done running, await, then we say campground image ID is equal to, remember we have result inside of result, public ID and secure URL. And then here, if there was an error in either one of these two lines, it gets caught, returned. We don't even get to these lines right here because the return takes us out of here and redirects us back to the previous page. And then, of course, the error message gets flashed. So we're waiting, then we're doing this, then we're doing this, then we're doing this, then we're doing this. So no matter whether or not there's a file that we're uploading a new image, we're going to see this executed in sequential synchronous order. Okay? So that was a quick little async await tutorial. One thing to note, this will not work if you're not using the newest version of Node. I think async await is available in Node version 8, but just to be safe, yeah, I would use either version 8 or version 9. If you're using Cloud 9, then all you have to do is nvm use 8 or nvm use 9, and that will get it working for this video. I'll make another video that goes into more detail about updating Node with Node Version Manager, but just remember it's in V as in Victor, M, use 8. And then once you're using that newest version, you can even check with nvm-ls, and it'll tell you which version you're using. You can use nvm-h, show you all this stuff for helping you out with NVM. Okay, so getting back to it, I'm going to run no daemon, server started, save this stuff right here. Let's go back and refresh. Of course, it's logged me out, and hopefully it's not running an error. Let's go see what we got. Okay, it says await is only valid in an async function. I gotcha. So if we go back here, the parent function for this is actually going to be this one. So I had async up here. I need to move it down to the campground.findById callback function. So if we look at it now, it says the server is started. Refresh. And now if we go to hello world, let's go ahead and log in. Go back to hello world, edit this campground, choose a new picture, use this one right here. Click update, cross our fingers, and there it is. So let's go take a look at the database, and we can compare. I think you can actually do maybe it's .pretty. Nice. So this format's a little bit nicer for us. So here's the updated campground. Here you can see the image ID changed from what it was previously. It used to be BSBD So now it's TGTE, so on and so forth. So that's good, and then the image URL is updated here. So without logging into my Cloudinary, I can just tell you that it deleted the other image. Cloudinary hosts their images all over on these different servers, so it's cached temporarily. So you may actually have access to that old image URL. Let's go ahead and just copy it from here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is the old image URL, and I'm going to copy it. And I thought that was the old image URL. Where is it? Here we go. This is the old one. It's still going to be available maybe for 24 hours or so until the cache gets cleared from those servers, and then all those changes get propagated across the server, and it will then disappear. Not that it really matters, but some people wonder, oh, why is that URL still working? And that's why. Okay, so that's it. We're able to edit. Now let's go ahead and make sure that we can delete. So this part should be really easy. We'll go to the routes. We're going to use this same destroy code that we have up here. So let's go down. We don't even have a delete route here. So we'll go ahead and create one real quick, no problem. I'm going to get rid of this middleware. This is some leftover code from Cole's tutorial. So router.delete, and then it goes ID. We're just passing in ID for the campground that we want to delete. And let's see here. I think it's just going to be the function with the request object, the res object. Normally I put next in here, but we don't need it, so I'm just going to leave it out. So go ahead and semicolon there. And we'll do a campground.findById. And normally you could do a find by ID and remove, but we need to find it by its ID and then take that campground, access the image ID, delete the image from the cloud, because if we're deleting the campground, we don't want to have access to that image still, right? We don't want that filling up our Cloudinary account and just taking up space. So we're going to do a find by ID. We're going to pass in rec.params.id. Then we'll have another function here, error, the campground that gets found, and we'll put semicolon down there. And we'll do, now that we have the campground, we of course want to handle the error. So if there's an error, we'll say, let's just go ahead and copy and paste what we have up here. So we will return res.redirect back, give the error message, yada yada. Okay, so here is where we're going to do the delete code. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy it from up here, easy peasy. And remember, here's the function, the parent function for the delete, the async await code that we're about to run. So we put async right before that function name. And now we can use the async await feature. And so we'll paste this in. But if there happened to be an error, we want to catch that. So we'll do a try and then catch error. We'll move this up into the try. Down here in the error, we'll just do our typical error handling here. And yes, this is a lot of repetition for these error handling. You could definitely do this a better way, and I will cover that in a different tutorial. So we're waiting for the campground to be destroyed, and then as soon as it's done being destroyed, we are going to res.redirect back to the home page, or rather the campground's index. And of course, we can do a rec.flash message. So we'll say success, and then we'll pass in a success message. We'll say campground, campground deleted successfully. And what am I missing? Of course, we haven't deleted the campground yet. We've just deleted the image from Cloudinary. So we wait for that to finish. Once that asynchronous procedure is done, then we can take that campground that we found right here, and I'm pretty sure we'll find out that it is just .remove. Okay, so assuming that works, then we go ahead and flash campground successfully deleted, and then we go back to the campgrounds page. All right, great, but now we need a button to delete the campground. So let's go over to views, campgrounds, show.ejs, change the syntax here, and let's scroll down to where we have the button for edit a campground, and right next to it we will put another button, and this will actually not be a button, it'll be a form. So we'll say form action is equal to /campgrounds, and we have access to the campground ID just like we used in the edit form. So in EJS we'll say campground.id, and then we'll put a little question mark here and say underscore method is equal to delete, and then of course that form can be a method equals post, and inside the form we can have an input type equals submit, value equals delete, and if we want to make it look like Bootstrap, then we can go ahead and take this class right here, paste it in. Let's change it from a button warning to a button error, or I think they call it a button danger, to get red in Bootstrap, and let's go take a look and see what that looks like. So if we refresh, neither of the buttons are there. No problem, we'll log in so that we can get those. Go back to more info. There's the button. Yes, you can make it inline. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Let's just get it working. So if we click on delete, campground deleted successfully. It's no longer right here. And of course, if you went back to Mongo and you looked up your campgrounds, I'm going to clear this out, run this. There's nothing there. Okay, great. So the campground image has been deleted from Cloudinary. The campground has been deleted from the MongoDB database. And if we wanted to upload a new one, we could edit the image, so on and so forth. So that's it for this tutorial. If you have any questions, let me know, and we'll see you in the next video.